Chapter 5, Episode 17. They hired a guide with his truck to have a look at places not so common to tourists. They were on their way to Jaun Blanco National Park and stopped at a small café in a village that could be more aptly described as a tiny community. Neither Sally nor Billy were versed in Spanish. Billy wanted eggs over easy with his refried beans and toast. He explained a few times to their guide, who spoke English as good or better than the average American. Billy demonstrated with his hands how it was done, but the waitress, also the cook, refused to understand. She maintained a big smile before finally telling the guide that Billy should come into the kitchen and show them. So Billy figured, fine, I will. He left Sally and Rodrigues at their table and followed the waitress into the kitchen. She pointed at the bucket of fat, Billy guessed pig fat, but wasn't certain, in the frying pan. He dropped in a little fat and waited for it to melt, then gently placed in 2 eggs. The girls, the 2 young women, watched and prepared the rest of the breakfast. When the time was right, Billy flipped the 2 eggs gently, just for a minute. The reason one does this is to finish off the whites of the eggs. Those, as far as Billy understood, were not to be runny. In fact, he couldn't eat them if the whites were runny. But the yellows, they could be just a little runny. So they came onto the plate. The girls smiled. Billy figured they might very well have seen eggs over easy in their lives, but he didn't know. Usually the eggs were scrambled. That was also okay with Billy. Except today he wanted them over easy. And if he had to get invited into the kitchen to do it himself, that was fine by him. Rodrigues and Sally were smiling when Billy came back from his visit with the young women. It was a normal, somewhat fatty local breakfast and very satisfying. They all drank a black coffee afterwards. Then they were back on the road, taking it slowly and stopping off to enjoy the scenery. Billy took several photos with his smart device. They spent the afternoon in Castro Blanco National Park and then the evening and next day at Hotel El Tocano Resort and Thermal Spa. The next stop was Doubletree Resort on the Pacific. There they spent a few days before heading south. They spent a night in San Jose so Rodrigues could be with his family, and Sally and Billy could do some fine dining. Then they were off with a 1-engine plane to the southwest to spend a few nights in Iguana Lodge Beach Resort and Spa. They had a look over at Panama, but didn't visit. They had to buy a few things, like leather boots to keep snakes from biting, before they went on a 10-day, not at all luxurious jungle trek. This could only be done with a guide that knew how to survive in the jungle. Not the same as a stroll in the park. On this journey there were 3 other hikers with them. Not in the physical condition of Sally and Billy, but they were real troopers and kept pace. Sleeping was in a hammock with a mosquito and other insect net. There were spiders and snakes, scorpions and other small and large creatures. Toucans and sloths were often spotted, monkeys and other primates. The guide knew them all by name. They didn't see any large predator cats, but that was not a bad thing. Many different colorful birds and frogs and butterflies, and trees. One doesn't often think of trees when in a jungle because they were everywhere. But if your guide wants you to see them, he points and says, "Look! A bird shitting on a branch started this tree and the roots grew down the other tree and eventually strangled it. And then one walked inside the hollow tree and saw all the bats that lived in it." The 3 weeks flew by before they could even wonder about how long they had been from Washington. But like all grand adventures, well, most anyway, the 3 weeks did end, and they were back in their apartment wondering what the hell was going on. "I have an idea for a little business." "Not yet, you don't." Sally knew it was a place in Costa Rica. It was easy to fall in love with the country. It was about as close to the opposite extreme as one could get from their last big trip.